Hello everybody and welcome to Books with Ike. My name is Isaac and today I'm going to be going over every book I read in March. This is the last day I've got to film before I go back to uni, so I'm having to do it now. So if the lighting is terrible, I'm really sorry about that, but it's the best I can do, because I probably won't have time to film anything at uni. So, yeah. And obviously it is now May, so I'm using my notes to talk about these books because I cannot remember everything I thought. And so I read 5 books in March and then DNF'd 1. So that's 5 books plus the DNF, it's not 4 books. As always, I'm going to list content warnings in the description rather than talking about them because it can be far more comprehensive that way. And so, yeah. This is only my March wrap-up because I only read 2 books in April and I anticipate not reading many books in May either, so I'm going to put those 2 together rather than March and April. And so without further ado, let's just get into it. And so the first book I read in March was Saga Volume 6 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, and this was another great volume of Saga. If you didn't know, Saga is a space opera about 2 members of warring races called Marco and Alana, who fall in love and have a kid, and they just want to live peacefully outside the war, but everyone else wants them dead. And so, yeah, this is Volume 6. Yeah, it was a great one, I gave it 4 stars. The art was as beautiful as always. There were some great new characters introduced. I particularly loved Noreen. There were some really great emotional moments, and there was some great development for the characters and the relationships. I particularly loved Upshur and Doff's storyline because it completely changed how I see those characters. And in this volume I actually started to like Hazel's narration, which has been one of my main problems with the previous volumes. So that's cool. My one complaint about this is that the environments and the designs for the side characters weren't as fun and interesting as in previous volumes, but that's really not important, so yeah, it was all around a great volume, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. But I am going to wait until the hiatus is over to pick up Volume 7. And so the next book I read in March was Jade City by Fonda Lee, and I absolutely loved this. This is set in the city of Janloon, and in Janloon, magic comes from wearing jade, and only certain bloodlines can properly stand jade, and so Janloon is basically ruled by 2 crime families, the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan. In Jade City, or the Greenbone Saga as it's called, we follow the No Peak clan, and we follow the leading family of the No Peaks, the Calls. There's Lan, who is the leader of the No Peak clan, who is just trying to gain respect from his clan and distinguish himself and not ride on his grandfather's reputation. There is Hilo, who is the clan's enforcer, and he is basically just trying to gain whatever acceptance he can. There is Shay, who is the previously estranged sister of Lan and Hilo, and she has just returned to Janloon after years of being away, and she doesn't want to get involved in the clan, but obviously gets dragged back into it. And then there's Andon, and Andon is a student who is a cousin of the Core family, who is struggling with his mixed heritage as well as his dark family history. And then, as well as all of these people, there is a thief called Barrow, who is not a member of the Core family. He is not a Greenbone, who is someone who has the ability to wield Jade, and he is just hungry for Jade, because Jade is power. And so, basically, recently a new drug has been developed which allows anyone to wield Jade, and this basically kicks off the start of a gang war between the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan. And so yeah, it's a very complicated story. It's also a great one. I gave it 4.5 stars. The characters are all absolutely incredible, and they really develop in such interesting and unexpected ways that your opinions on them change wildly throughout the book. My favourite characters were Andon and Shay, but that doesn't mean the other characters weren't good, because they were. The world building and the atmosphere of Janloon was incredible. You can really feel like you're there and you understand everything about it. The action scenes were incredibly intense, and they were like really fast and dramatic. Rather than having any drawn-out fight scenes, they're all done so quickly, like an actual fight would be. So that's cool. There's some really great politicking going on. That's basically the whole book, the politicking. And the plot is so unpredictable and has some really shocking twists. It's just so good. I did have some problems with it, obviously. It could have done with some more explanation of the magic system, because it starts getting used really prominently before you learn anything about it, and you just have to sort of pick up on what all of the different terms mean, and they're never, like, explained to you, and usually that would be good, but Fond du Lis doesn't handle it well. And there were certain paragraphs or passages where the writing would switch to present tense to explain cultural aspects of Janloon, and I just really didn't like that. It should have just still been kept in past tense. But yeah, the ending was really emotional, and I can't wait to see where the story goes from here. And obviously there are a lot of content warnings for this one, so do check the description. And then the next book I read in March was Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, the second book in the Last Hours series, and the most recent book in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. And so, the Shadowhunter Chronicles is about half-angelic demon-hunting warriors called Shadowhunters, and the Last Hours series is set in the early 1900s, and it follows the children of the characters from the previous Shadowhunter series, The Infernal Devices, and I do recommend reading that series first before you get into this one. I also recommend reading the Dark Artificers series before you get into this one, which I recommend reading the Mortal Instruments before that one, so just basically read them all in order. Unless you're, like, really not interested in the modern day stuff, and then you can just read the Victorian stuff and the Edwardian stuff. Anyway, The Last Hours is about a Shadowhunter called Cordelia Carstairs, who moves to London and attempts to ingratiate herself with powerful Shadowhunters for political reasons, and then when she arrives in London, a new type of demon appears, which has the ability to walk in daylight and carries a deadly plague. That part of the series was pretty much wrapped up in the first book, and so I can't really explain what this is about without spoiling it massively. I did want to do a full discussion on this book, and I might still do so when I have the time, but I lost all my headings that I was going to talk about, so I might not. I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 4.25 stars. I would have given it 4.5 stars, but the ending is the most cliche, ridiculous bullshit ever, and so I took off 0.25 stars for that. And so I originally gave the previous book, Chain of Gold, 4 stars, but this was so much better than that, so I lowered my rating down to 3.5, because I really didn't care about Chain of Gold all that much. I thought all of the characters were, like, really boring and not distinct at all, and that's, like, the main thing I come to this series for, is the characters, and I didn't think that the main romance had any chemistry at all. And then this book happened, and I now love all of the characters, and think all of the romances are great. Well, no. Actually, we'll talk about that. So, yeah, I absolutely loved this. The plot was incredible. There were some really interesting world-building details which are brought up, which are, like, really interesting to contemplate, and I do want to talk about that at some point with spoilers, but I can't right now. Most of the character development was incredible, most of the relationship development was incredible. I really didn't like how any of the couples ended up in this book. It's just such contrived drama for the sake of drama, and I just really don't like that. It literally adds nothing to the story, and it's just so pathetic, and Cassandra Clare is better than this. She's written romances without drama before, so, like, why? My main annoyance with this book is that my favourite character was completely sidelined, and so was the relationship I'm most invested in. They got some good scenes together in this book, but, like, there was, like, so minuscule amounts of attention. But I did love what we actually got, which was, like, James and Cordelia's development was great, Grace's development was great, Lucy and Jesse's development was great, Thomas's development was great, there was some nice scenes that we got from Christopher. I love all of these characters, they're also great. I really didn't like Anna and Ariadne's romance, which surprises me. What happens in this book is just horrible with them. Like, Ariadne deserves so much better than Anna. And that's not that Anna is a bad person, but like, just the way Anna treats Ariadne is just so petty and cruel, and it's just so horrible, and I hate it. And so the plot was obviously incredible, and I didn't predict any of it, and just, there were some really great scenes in this, which are just so cool. Overall, yeah, I loved this. I gave it 4.25 stars. Yeah. And then I read the new Skulduggery Pleasant novella, Apocalypse Kings. Because this is a novella, it's so difficult to summarise. And so this is about a boy called Adadayo, who is left a mysterious box by his grandmother when she passes away. And he opens the box, and 3 gods come out of it, and they want to destroy the world. And so that's all I can say about that. For what this book was, it was perfect. I gave it 4 stars, because even though it's perfect for what it is a tiny little 96-page novella, and so there's not much room for, like, development and stuff. But it was utterly hilarious, as Derek Landy's work always is, but this is, like, particularly funny, but it's also a really compelling story with a really good ending, and so yeah, it was great. I do recommend getting your hands on this and reading it before the book Dead or Alive, because Adadayo shows up in Dead or Alive, and you're not going to understand what that means unless you've read this book. So yeah, I loved this, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the next book I read is the one I DNF'd, and that is The Citadel of Fear by Francis Stevens. And this is a horror story. Francis Stevens was a contemporary of Lovecraft, I think, or earlier than him. And this is about these 2 explorers who go into these mountains in Mexico, I think. It must have been Mexico, because it's about Aztecs. So they go into the mountains in search of gold, and they end up in this weird villa, and there's this guy there. And then, long story short, they end up in the ancient Aztec city of Tlapalan, where the gods still reign. And so, I was enjoying this up to a point. About a third of the way through this book, the characters leave Tlapalan, and that made me realise that I really didn't care about anything else that was going on, and I hated the writing style. It's so boring and clinical, and the characters aren't very interesting, and I just really got so bored reading this that I just put it down, and I decided I just wasn't going to finish it. I was really interested by the story, but I wasn't willing to suffer however many pages it took to get back to it. There is some really intriguing stuff going on, there is some great descriptions, but like not many. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. I didn't rate this because I DNF'd it. I DNF'd it at page 115, so yeah. And then the last book I read in March was A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. And this is a YA urban fantasy, and it's about Fae. And so this is set in a modern-day Toronto, which is where the Fae court of Unseelie Spring lives, and the king of the Unseelie Spring court is also the High King of the Fae. And basically, half-Fae, called Ironborn, are being murdered by a serial killer, and it threatens to expose the Fae courts to the human world. But the authorities don't seem to want to do anything about the murders, and so it's up to 4 queer Fae teenagers to put a stop to everything. The main character is Arlo. She is a descendant of the Unseelie Spring Court, and she faces expulsion from the Fae courts for her lack of magic. There is also Nausicaa, who is a Fury exiled from the realm of the Immortals for terrible crimes, and she is investigating the source of a mysterious magic that she doesn't understand. There is Vahan, who is the Prince of the Seelie Summer Court, who believes the Ironborn murders are related to a string of human disappearances, and he wants to put a stop to both of them. And his bodyguard Aurelian is forced to help him, and Aurelian is also dealing with a terrible secret. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I loved the characters. Aurelian was my favourite. Arlo occasionally annoyed me, but I liked her overall, which is good because she's the main character. The romances were really cute, and the romantic drama doesn't feel at all artificial like so many do. Chain of Iron, so that was good. The world building was incredible, and everything was so intricately constructed and fitted together so well, so that was great. And there was some really great exploration of trauma and mental illness. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I did have quite a few problems with it though. The first one is that the main antagonist just ended up being so boring. He was really interesting up until the main characters actually met him, at which point he just became, and this has been my favourite term for villains lately, this ranting cliché. And so that was boring. I stumbled over the prose a bit sometimes, and there were quite a few typos, but overall the prose was good, I quite liked it. And the big twist villain at the end was just so obvious it was going to be them, so that was disappointing. And there was like some naming of characters which just bugged me. There were a couple of characters who were named after Greek goddesses, and the characters who were named after these goddesses were male. And like, obviously that's not a problem, but with all of the other world-building detail that's brought into this, I feel like this has to be intentional, but I don't see why. There was this character called Lethe, who had nothing to do with memory or forgetfulness at all, so I'm just like, why is he called Lethe? This has to have been done for a reason, but I can't work out what it is. And then there's another male character called Eris, who has nothing to do with chaos, and I'm just like, why is he called Eris? These are mythologically significant names, and they can't just have been given to these characters at random. There has to be a reason, but I can't work out what the reason is. So, yeah. That was weird. And I don't understand why the High King of the Fae was so weirdly obstinate and unwilling to help with anything. I assume there's a reason that will be explored in the next book, but if there isn't, then that's just bad writing, isn't it? And I really didn't appreciate that there was a Harry Potter references in this. I realise it was probably written before J.K. Rowling's Turfree came out, but just like, yeah, the release for this was just poorly timed in that respect. But if I see any more Harry Potter references in the later books, I'm gonna be so much more annoyed. But yeah, despite all the problems I had with it, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm excited to see where the story goes from here and how all of these mysteries will unfold. So yeah, those were all the books I read in March. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear what you thought about them, so please leave that in the comments below. And also tell me about any books that you've read, not necessarily in March, but just recently. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter or add me as a friend on Goodreads if you feel like it. Links to both of those in the description. And feel free to message me on Goodreads. I'm always willing to talk to people about books, or really anything. But yeah, so this will probably be my last video for a while, because I'm going back to uni for a few weeks, and so I probably won't have time to film then. I'll try to, but it's not likely. But hopefully I'll get some videos out soon after I come back. But until then, thank you for watching. I have been Isaac, and this has been Books with Ike. Goodbye.